On the broadcast tonight, President Park Geun-hye says avoiding criticism is no solution to problems, apparently taking a swipe at her welfare minister for resigning in the wake of her administration's decision to scale back the national pension program. Pension rollback and the aftermath. We'll have the details. Lawmakers are back to work nearly a month after the National Assembly opened its first session under the Park Geun-hye administration. But it's not all smooth sailing. The session opens with a political tug-of-war over various issues. And what looked like a political hot potato has become a high-stakes game of chicken, with the continued operation of the U.S. government and the possible broader impact on the global economy hanging in the balance. Is the world's largest economy headed for a shutdown? This is Early Edition at 6. It is 5 a.m. in Washington, 10 in London, and 6 on a Monday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Gun-young.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us. We start with the latest turbulence surrounding the government's new pension plan.
Where President Park Geun-hye less than an hour ago accepted Health and Welfare Minister Jin-young's offer of resignation.
Earlier in the day, the Korean leader reaffirmed that she will push ahead with the new pension plan unveiled last week, calling on her senior government officials to keep their promises to the public.
Arirang News Presidential Office correspondent Oh Jin-ju has our top story.
In an apparent criticism of her Health and Welfare Minister Jin-young, President Park has urged her cabinet members and senior secretaries to have the sense of duty in pushing ahead with state affairs. Her comments came after Jin reiterated his intention to step down from his post on Sunday, despite President Park's refusal to accept his resignation, citing his disagreement with the president on the government's new basic pension program unveiled last week. President Park stressed that a problem will not be solved by trying to avoid public and political criticism, and called on senior government officials to have the faith and confidence in handling any pending issues. She also added that doing their best in their respective positions is the way to be trusted by the public, especially at hard times. On Sunday, Jin told reporters that he had opposed and is still against the idea of linking the new basic pension program with the national pension, and had expressed his views to the presidential office of Cheongwade a number of times. Under the new basic pension plan, only the lower 70% income bracket of senior citizens aged 65 and above will receive up to 200,000 won, or about $186, falling short of President Park's original pledge to provide the maximum $186 to all Koreans in this age group. However, even for those in the bottom 70%, basic pension payments will be reduced in accordance with how long they have contributed to the national pension system, with 1 in 10 receiving as little as $93. Jin's decision is causing quite a stir, as critics say. It shows how President Park is struggling to resolve differences on key policies with related ministries. It could also make the public question the government's pension program altogether, with Jin, who was in charge of drawing up her welfare pledges and other policy goals, has clearly expressed his opposition to the new system. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, over in Seoul's National Assembly, lawmakers got back to work this Monday, ending a month-long period of inactivity due to a political tug-of-war over a number of issues. Over the next few days and weeks, the rival parties are expected to lock horns on the Park Geun-hye government's scaled-back pension plan for senior citizens and the welfare minister's resignation over disagreement with the administration regarding that pension program. Arirang News political correspondent Kim Hyun-ji reports.
The National Assembly convened the first full-member meeting of the first regular session under the Park Geun-hye administration on Monday. This puts an end to a nearly 1 month-long period of parliamentary inactivity, and the rival parties are expected to clash head-on over a string of contentious issues going forward. That's precisely what happened at the first meeting of the Parliament's Health and Welfare Committee Monday. First, President Park's Health and Welfare Minister Jin-young, who over the weekend reiterated his intent to resign from his post, despite the president's refusal to accept his resignation, failed to show up for the meeting. The welfare minister was quoted as saying on Sunday that he had opposed and still opposes linking the new basic pension plan for seniors with the national pension program, announced by the government last week. His absence prompted opposition lawmakers on the Welfare Committee to launch an all-out offensive against the government's pension plan, saying it's a bad plan that even the president's welfare minister and one of her closest aides cannot agree with. Meanwhile, the committee's ruling party lawmakers argued that the welfare minister's absence is regrettable, but that their job is to focus on why the government had to scale back the pension plan and how they should move forward. On Tuesday, the National Assembly will hold an emergency hearing to question the government about why it scaled back the pension plan for seniors, retreating on a major campaign pledge made last December. Lawmakers will also focus on finding out what prompted the sudden resignation of the nation's top prosecutor, Choi Dong-wook, who officially ended his term on Monday. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
On the Inter-Korean Relations front, the Secretariat for the Two Koreas Joint Committee for the Inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex opened its doors on this Monday. The permanent body, which will be stationed at the North Korean border town, is staffed by both South Korean and North Korean personnel and will serve as a communication channel for the management of their joint business park. Now, officials held their first meeting this morning to exchange ideas on how the Secretariat should be run. This comes amid dampened inter-Korean relations following Pyongyang's sudden postponement of planned reunions for families separated since the Korean War.
This is a busy week for top military officials from Korea and the U.S. They are gathering for a series of significant defense talks on pending bilateral issues. The officials kicked things off on Monday, and our Defense Ministry correspondent Han Da-eun has the details.
Top military officials from Korea and the U.S. came together for the 38th Bilateral Military Committee meeting in Seoul on Monday, with a wide range of pending issues on the table.
Tomorrow marks the 60th year since Korea and the United States signed the Mutual Defense Treaty. It's very meaningful to hold the military committee meeting at a time like this.
During the closed-door meeting, Korea's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Chung Seung-jo, and his visiting counterpart, U.S. Army General Martin Dempsey, have reportedly agreed on the need to delay the transfer of wartime operational control from the U.S. to Korea, originally slated for 2015. The issue is not yet resolved, as Seoul is awaiting an official response from Washington. Defense Minister Kim Kwan-jin asked U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel for a delay in May, citing increasing missile and nuclear threats from North Korea. Monday's talks were held as a prelude to the Korea-U.S. Security Consultative meeting set for Wednesday, where the issue will be further discussed by Hagel and Minister Kim. But officials predict the two are unlikely to come up with a conclusion this time around, considering the numerous inherent complications involved. Right before departing for Korea, Hagel had also told reporters it's too early to decide on a possible delay of the UPCON transfer. Also part of the agenda was discussion of a customized Korea-U.S. deterrent strategy against North Korea's nuclear threats. Although the details have yet to be disclosed, Generals Chung and Dempsey have reportedly finished drawing up a specific deterrence plan, which is expected to be finalized by the military chiefs of the two countries at Wednesday's Security Consultative meeting. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
And the Defense Ministry will further commemorate Armed Forces Day with a military fair this week that aims to educate the public about the military experience. Our Kim Hyun-bin was on the scene, and he brings us this report.
The Korean military is having a fair in downtown Seoul this month to give the public a glimpse of what active duty soldiers go through during their roughly 1 year and 9 months of service. Hosted by the Ministry of Defense, the event is being held in a year filled with military milestones and aims to educate people about the service by inviting them to participate in some fun activities.
This year marks the 65th Armed Forces Day, the 60th year since the Korean armistice and the 60th anniversary of the Korea-U.S. alliance. This is a festival not only for the military but for ordinary people.
They had all the latest military gear on display, and the best part for some people was they got to try it all on for themselves.
My dream is to become an officer. It was fun to experience it here, but the pack is heavy, so it's a little tough.
Most popular was the snack corner, where there were several popular military snacks up for grabs.
What I have in my hand is kunderia, a military-style hamburger, which is a very popular breakfast item among active cadets. At this fair in downtown Seoul, ordinary people could get a little taste of what it's like to be in the Korean military.
Even foreigners were in for the ride.
I got guided here by some tourist information. We tried the food and the uniforms, and we saw the pictures. It was kind of cool seeing Korean's military history. Very informative.
The fair is scheduled to run through October 2nd. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
A grand national ceremony marking Korea's 65th Armed Forces Day will be held in Seoul on Tuesday, when parts of the city's central districts will be blocked off for a massive street parade. The Defense Ministry says both sides of the roadways near City Hall, Seoul Station, Jonggak Station, Namdaemun Gate, and the Sejong intersection will be partially or completely shut off to traffic from 1 to 5 p.m. The parade will feature displays of some 100 military vehicles carrying Korea's latest weapons, while about 4,500 troops will be marching along. Prior to the parade, there will be a ceremony at the Seoul Air Base in Gyeonggi Province with the participation of President Park Geun-hye and the military chiefs from Korea and the U.S., Kim Kwan-jin and Chuck Hagel.
Well, the game is the same, but many of the players have changed. The U.S. Congress and President Barack Obama are facing off in another supreme spending shutdown. If they do not agree on a government funding bill by the end of Monday, Washington time, much of the U.S. government will shut down. And it's a little past 5 a.m. on Monday, September 30th in Washington, so they are running out of time.
We last saw this happen back in 2011 when Congress narrowly avoided a shutdown by passing a spending measure shortly after the midnight deadline hit. Of course, the things that happen in the world's largest economy have a great impact on the rest of the world, including Korea. To take a closer look at the first possible U.S. government shutdown in 17 years, we're now joined live in the studio by Dr. Kim In-chul, Professor of International Economics at Sungkyunkwan University in Korea. Professor Kim, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Professor Kim, before we get any further into our discussion, let's first do a recap of the events leading up to where we are now, or where U.S. is on the verge of a U.S. government shutdown. How did the U.S. get here? I mean, so close to the deadline and so close to a shutdown. And what will a shutdown actually mean?
Well, by the U.S. law, excuse me, by the U.S. law, the U.S. Congress has have to pass the budget bill by the end of September 30, for next year's budget, and now, the deadline is almost, there, and when they said the U.S. would have the shutdown of the government, doesn't mean to shut down completely its operations. Still, the doors of the other government agencies may be open, like people in the security-sensitive areas, active military personnel and air traffic controllers and border security guards. Still, they have to be on duty, and other important essential activities still will be going on. But non-essential activities like issuance of a new passport will be closed, and also federal parks and museums be closed, and this would affect the U.S. economy a lot. Will damage the economy to a large extent, because the U.S. economy has been recovering to some extent, but that's going to have some impact on the U.S. recovery.
Right, and that would be about, by estimates, about 800,000 of the 2.1 million strong hold federal workforce in the U.S. if there were to be a shutdown.
Right. Yeah.
Now, over the weekend, on early Sunday morning, local time to be exact, House Republicans approved a spending plan that would delay Obamacare for a year and repeal its tax on medical devices. The plan has been tossed to the Senate. So what are the implications, Professor?
Well, the working of the U.S. Congress is very complicated. It's not easy to understand how they're doing, but you see that there are two chambers of the Congress. One is the Senate and the other the House of Representatives. And the House is controlled by the Republicans, whereas the Senate controlled by the Democrats. And the Republicans oppose the Obamacare, whereas the Democrats and the President Obama desperately want to see their Obamacare be implemented. And as they been fighting against each other up until this time, it's very likely that the shutdown is going to be realized, because I don't see any room for compromise at the last minute between the two chambers. So it is going to be somewhat perhaps last minute dramatic compromise would be possible, because the two Senate and the House of Representatives do not like on the surface the U.S. shutdown of the government, but still they have some experiences previously, so there will be shutdown of the government for some time soon, from perhaps next week or so.
Right, because back in 2011, we saw the same thing happen, and just a minute or two after the deadline, they came to a compromise and agreed on a budget plan, which all in all, however, sent sovereign ratings down for the United States for the first time by Standard & Poor's. So, of course, they do not want to see that. But if a budget passes within the next 19 hours or so, is the U.S. in the clear?
Not quite, because they're going to have another problem coming up soon in about 2 weeks, because they face the debt limit problem, because the Treasury people have been doing making a lot of efforts to avoid the debt limit problem, but they said the Treasury Secretary has indicated that the extraordinary measures been exhausted now, so they need to really get the approval from the Congress again for extending the debt limit borrowing capacities. So that's going to be a more serious problem than this government shutdown. So that's another problem they have to struggle with.
Right, and I think one point that we should note is the fact that, unlike many other developed economies, for the U.S., it's the legislative branch and not the executive branch, which is President Barack Obama, who gets to decide how much the government can borrow. So there definitely needs to be a compromise between the two parties in order for them to raise the debt ceiling.
Yeah, because the people worldwide are concerned about welfare programs, because there's some inefficiencies involved, and it is a good system for the Congress and the administration to negotiate and compromise on somewhat the budget spending or the debt limit. But for the U.S., it seems to me that it's been a political game between the Republicans and Democrats, and that way the U.S. economy is going to be damaged. But not only that, the global economy, is going to be affected a lot by what they're doing, because the U.S. economy, as you know, is pulling the world economy as a locomotive. So if the economy doesn't do well in the U.S., that's going to have a negative impact on the developing countries, especially the newly emerging countries, as well as the Korean economy.
Right. Well, meeting halfway is important. They are not going to get anywhere by agreeing to disagree, that's for sure. So what kind of compromises could the two parties reach to avoid a government shutdown?
Well, we understand that both the parties do not like the government shutdown, but I hope that they're going to come up with some compromise. On the one hand, On the other hand, they need to consider not only their, this is their internal political issues and problems, but also it is, affecting the global economy as well. So I want they come up with the better solutions, considering the other economies in the world.
Right, like you mentioned, there is no doubt that there will be consequences and ramifications for the global economy, including Korea, should the U.S. government come to a shutdown. What are some possible scenarios that we can face? And in your view, what do you think economic policymakers here in Korea should do to better prepare the Korean economy from as an insulation from this potential threat?
All right. If the U.S. is going to have a shutdown of the government, and U.S. also is going to have a problem with the, extending the debt limit, then the U.S. is going to default on its debt, and that's going to cause the downgrade to the creditworthiness of the U.S. bonds or the U.S. Economy, and it's going to damage the U.S. economic recovery. And that's going to have a tremendous adverse impact on the global economy, as well as on, as I said, and on the Korean economy in terms of the change of the volatility in the exchange rates and volatility in the capital flows. So for for Korea, it's going to be susceptible to changes in the exchange rates, especially when the currency becomes stronger. That's going to discourage the Korean exporters. So we need to monitor and closely watch what's going on in the U.S. politics and then policies. And fortunately, at this point, Korea is running trade surplus for some, to some extent. So we are just in a better position than compared to other developing or newly emerging countries and so forth. So again, we need to be closely watching the capital flows and the changes in the exchange rates.
All right, well, we'll certainly find that out in a matter of hours. And, but as of now, it seems like both houses of the U.S. Congress are taking the words of Shakespeare to heart. Onto the breach once more the U.S. government goes. So thank you, Dr. Kim, for today.
My pleasure.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with heroes and experts to help you understand the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Geun-hye and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now shifting gears to the economy, Korean import prices rose by 2. Korean construction firms are winning more projects overseas, mostly on large-scale orders from Asian and Middle Eastern countries. New data from the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport show the number of deals signed by domestic firms in the first 9 months of the year increased at 13% from the same period last year. The surge is due to a spike in demand from Asian and Middle Eastern countries, and the total value of the deals now amounts to some $44.8 billion, including one deal for a thermal power plant in Saudi Arabia worth more than $3 billion. The government's crackdown on tax evasion launched to expand the nation's revenue base and root out corruption is in full swing. The National Tax Service said Monday that it had collected about $692 million so far this year by tracking down big conglomerates and wealthy households with assets of more than $46.5 million, suspected of hiding money in offshore accounts to avoid paying taxes. The NTS is also planning to broaden its investigation into tax evasion after a new law takes effect this November, which would make it easier for the government to obtain information on taxpayers' cash transfers. The crackdown on tax evasion is part of larger efforts by the Park Geun-hye administration to regulate the illegal exchange of money and goods in the nation's ever-expanding underground economy.
Time for weather. We have a new weathercaster with us in the studio. Her name is easy to remember because it's the same as a Korean soccer star. Kim Bo-kyung is standing by at the Weather Center.
Right, Bo-kyung will be giving us the weather updates on our early edition at 6 from now on. Bo-kyung, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Kan-young and Daniel. And yes, I will be delivering the most up-to-date forecast for our viewers as they end the day's work.
Great. So, Bo-kyung, we were off to a cloudy morning here in Seoul, but now we're getting some sun. How is the rest of the country looking?
Well, Kanyang, after the round of autumn rain we had over the weekend, the nation in general was off to a cloudy start. Now, tomorrow, the nation will continue to have more sunshine, and average daytime highs around the nation will hit 27 degrees with a low of 24. But there will be rain in the Gangwon province until later tomorrow, so please be sure to have an umbrella handy. Now, taking a closer look at tomorrow's forecast, Seoul and Daegu should reach 26 and 27 degrees respectively. Meanwhile, Gwangju and Busan should hit 27. Moving on to other regions. Daejeon and Jeju should hit 25 degrees. Meanwhile, rainy Mount Kumgang peaks at 13. Well, that's all I have for you this hour. Have a wonderful evening and join me for another update after 8.
Thank you for that, Bo-kyung, and that's all from us for this hour. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Moon Geon-young. Thank you as always for being here with us. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you right back here same time tomorrow. Good night.